we 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, number 5. I'd say start with filter 5. Okay, let's see what happens when I do that. I can run this thing. I hit enter. And look at that. The only files I see, first of all, it says start with A. I only see the file that start with the letter A. Yes, sir.
Wasn't there American Airlines as well? AAL.
AAL?
AAL.
Let me see.
It was on
Stock
our
data.
stock data.
No, I don't have
Oh,
AAL.
no. Oh,
In
okay.
fact, on mine, it's all data, so it's just this.
Okay.
Okay? But it's correct in that sense. And so we see how that works. Now, we don't want really that. I just want number 1, which is the all.csv, or maybe in my case, number 2, I just want to look at some monthly data, okay? And you made me realize something. I never did change the stuff. It's really bizarre. Well, here's AAL. That is in this particular folder. So I'm going to use that folder so that I have access to more data. So my starting folder will be this other one. Now that one does have AAL, so let's see if we are right. Let's take filter number 5. Let's run this. By the way, that was a good observation.
Thank you.
Okay, so I load, and yeah, here it is now, all the A stocks. A. So you can see, I mean, if I wanted all the stock that starts with A and end in Z, I could, you know, like Amazon. AMZ, well, there's an N at the end, so, you know, stuff like that. You could do that, okay? All right, so now we pretty much, hopefully, have all the stuff we wanted. We've got our open file dialog set. And if you look at it, how much stuff do you have? You had to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 little items. But you didn't have to really type anything except for this stuff here. Okay, everything else you could just copy or select. Yeah, you type this guy. But your open file dialog is done. You don't even have to know the syntax of how this would have done, although you can always go, if you wanted to, you can always just go to your code, and you could see how in code all of that comes about. Okay, form1.cs, here it is. I can go into this guy here, and I gotta go into the design. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, alternate Control L, which is the view thing. Here, form designer.cs. Here it is. So, come on. Okay, so now that we are in the code, if you'd been curious, you could say, how is all of this done? You go into the designer generated code, and here it shows you everything it said for all the different controls. Here's the button load ticker. It shows you in code how you would have set, you know, the name, how you would have set the size, and how you would have added the event handler. And you say, yeah, I want to see the open file dialog. Well, here's the open file dialog, and you can see the parts that we set. It says, yeah, you set the default extension to CSV, you set the file name to this, you set the filter to all of this, you set the initial directory, you said that read-only should be checked, and show read-only. Remember all these guys we did? Here they are. And this tells you, if I didn't have a visual designer to just do point and click, I would have had to type those lines of code. So this helps you also understand, oh, if I had to do the code myself, this is what it looks like. But I have this tool that allows me to do things, you know, far more easily. Okay, so we've got that. We know we open, and the one thing we want to do now is to say, all right, we click on the button. Once we click on the button, we get the open file dialog to come up. The user is going to select the file. What do we do when the user selects a file? What would we like to do at that point? The concept.
Display.
Yeah, you want to display, you're going real quick to the end product, but before you can display, I mean, what do you have to do? You have to go read that file. Yes, no? Okay, so yes, the ultimate goal is, yes, you do want to go display, but you know, you really want to first read it. You can't display it until you first read it. Okay, so that's something we have to think about. And how do we even know that the user has selected a file? How do we know that?
There is an event for that?
That's why there is an event for that from the open file dialog. And if you don't know, or if at least at this point you start getting the concept that, wow, in that framework, it's pretty simple. Every control out there can fire an event, and all you as the programmer have to do, you just have to handle the event. Write the code to handle the event. The other part that you have to do is to go study this stuff, find out what's available to you, find out for all this control, what are the events that are available. Of course, you're not going to be able to remember and memorize all of that. Nobody's asking you to do that. But they ask you to at least have enough curiosity to go take a look at them, because if you had taken a look at the open file dialog and say, well, yeah, I suspect that when someone interacts with the open file dialog, some sort of event or event must be fired out. Because that's how it works. Any control, the concept is simple. The controls fire events when you interact with them. Whether it's you click on them, or you hit a key on the keyboard when the control has the focus, because it's going to get the event, hey, a key was hit, okay? Or if you drop something, like you do a drag and drop, hey, something was dropped on you, and so forth. You don't have to answer all the event, but at least if you read about that, you would say, oh, let's take a look at what open file dialog, this guy here, when I ask for the properties, okay? And you say, let's go to the event. Oh, wow, what a complicated guy. It's only got 2 events, thank God. Okay, and you say file OK, it goes straight there. That's the default one, and it says, oh, this occurs when the user clicks the open or save button in the dialog box. Now, this is bad documentation because it's not necessarily for that. This is not open dialog, but it's essentially said, yeah, once you select a file and you say, that's what I want, you'll get that event. So you say, okay, let's go and create an event handler for that, because I want to know when the user has selected a file. I just click, here's my event handler. Of course, it's empty, but we can check to see, is that really true, by saying, hey, why don't we write the file that was, the name of the file that was chosen, why don't we put that in the caption of the form? And again, the caption is what the top part of the form is, and the property that is the caption is text. And all these event handlers, by the way, if you look at the code, you see that they are all methods of the form. So when I say text, which object am I talking about? I'm talking about the form. So the text of the form, I can say, hey, equal, okay? And at that point, you can say open file dialog, load ticker, dot, and where does the file name exist? Oh my God, it's called file name. Really? Okay. So file name, boom. So all we've done is written one line of code here where we say, all right, let's run this thing. We're gonna bring up, load ticker, bring up the file dialog. It's got AAPL already selected. So let's pick AAPL. And look at that in the caption. It just put the full path of that file. So right now we say, hey, in just what we've done today, something you could have done on your own by Sunday, or previous Sunday, you say, hey, at least I have the part where this happens. Okay, now what? Well, we're gonna have to take this file and somehow read it, okay? Yes? No. We read it, and what do we want to have back when we've read the file? What would we like conceptually to have read back to us?
I'm assuming we have a candlestick class and parse the file.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. But you have your hand up. What would be your view? What do you want to have when you...
Just the more specific properties, so like the start time, end time, and then the high price, low price.
Yeah, so basically you want to read the candlesticks, but you'd like to have them back as a collection of candlesticks. After all, that's what those files are. They're nothing more than a list of candlesticks. Yes? No? So when you read, you say, oh, when I read this stuff, I better end up with some list of candlesticks. Now, the stuff I sent you about binding, okay, is not necessarily the best, I realize now. But if I have a list of candlesticks, then I want you to be aware of the fact that you can just tell interested controls, such as a data grid view or a chart, here's your data. Point to the list of candlesticks, and that's it. That control will then populate itself. The data grid view will say the moment you say that's your data, it just displays all the data. It reads it really quickly, and that's it. If it's a chart, you're gonna say, here's your data, and the chart will say, okay. You then have to tell it explicitly, bind, and that's when it will display. Why? Because certain controls, when you bind, there's a bunch of other things that might have to be also set up. So it will actually let you change things, and when you know you're ready, that's when you say bind. That's why a chart, even though you tell it, here's your data, it won't do anything with it until everything else is set up and you say bind, at which point it will display the data, okay? So now the thing is, we have to have somehow a candlestick class. Didn't we do the candlestick class? Yes, no?
No.
Yes.
Yes, so we have a candlestick class in our project, yes?
No.
No? Well, you should, how many of you have the candlestick class in their project? Yeah, look around, so you should already have that. So, now, you can just ask for your candlestick class, ChatGPT or whoever to write it for you, okay? You can just do that. So let me see, because I don't want to waste the time here. I'm going to go to this guy, and I'm going to tell it, hey, I want to add, okay, and this is to show you something that you can do in the future maybe. I want to add a existing item, because I've already done that myself for other classes or for you. And the way I can do this is I can say, hey, okay, what item do you want to add? And I can say, well, I have this project one thing here, project one, and oh, look at that, candlestick.cs. Do you see that? Do you see what I've just done? If you'd work, imagine for a moment that in some other application, or you work for a company, they have a whole bunch of things that were done. In this new project that you're doing, you want to add something that you've already done and designed, but that exists in another project. You can say add, just like you could have added a new class. Now, one approach is you can ask ChatGPT, write me a candlestick class in C# for a Windows Forms application. Make sure you add volume, okay? It will create that for you, okay? Well, it created that for me, if you want to think of it this way, and I can do the following thing. I say, here's candlestick.cs. So I have it all set up. If you haven't, though we did before, some of you already have it in your thing, so that tells me, those of you who don't have it, I don't know what you're doing, okay? And I'm not gonna redo it. So I have it here under candlestick.cs. Now, pay attention about how you do this. I can say add, and it will add to the project, but it has two ways of adding. Look at the little arrow. And if you're not there, let me know, because this is important. The little arrow says I can either add it or I can add it as a link, which is different. If I just say add, it will grab that whole file, will make a full copy of it and put that in my project, okay? So it's just gonna clone the other candlestick CS file, make a copy of the file and put a file like that in there. Or I can say add it as a link, which means that now in my project, I have access to that file, but it didn't make a copy of the file, it's just a link to it, which is great because if the people who created that candlestick file go ahead, found a bug or something and fix it, I automatically get that change reflected in my project, okay? But if I want to take possession of this because I can do a better job and so forth, I can just grab, make a copy, and from that point on, I'm kind of responsible for that thing. If they fix their thing, they have a bug or whatever, I won't know about it because I made a copy and that's it. So you might want to use a link. Yes?
I don't have that arrow next to add, it just gives me the option to just...
Because you don't have, did you have a candlestick in another project?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to take a look, okay? But let me try to get this, otherwise you just, or if you have it, you can also just create a new candlestick, create a new class, and then go grab that whole file and put it in your directory, okay? Many ways to skin a cat. So I'm gonna say add, and boom. Now notice that in my project, I now have a candlestick.cs. Now I wanna show you what that looks like. Here it is. Okay, that candlestick class, okay, it has all the property stuff, and the people who say, I don't have it, you're spending a lot of time talking with your friend, giving you help, that's good, but you're missing all the stuff, okay? So here it is, this is the candlestick class that I had before that was created by, what do you call that, Visual Studio, and this is also, by ChatGPT or whichever, and one of the things we want is to have a constructor that takes a string data. This is the thing where you can say, hey, I have a string of data, which represents my candlestick. I want to construct a candlestick from that. Just like you could construct, the way you're probably thinking of constructing a candlestick is, hey, how about you give me the date, the open, the high, the low, the close, and I'll create a candlestick. Isn't that like the natural way you would think of creating a candlestick? Okay, but you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be reading a file. I'm going to be getting a string. Can I make a constructor that says, give me the string, and I'll construct myself from it by splitting the string? This is all done by ChatGPT, okay? So you can get the same thing. But essentially what's going on here, it says, all right, here's how you construct a candlestick from a string. Okay, first of all, we specify our separators, which are the comma and the double quote. And the way you do that, it's got to be seen as a character array. Now, when you ask ChatGPT, okay, to give you such a constructor, you need to tell it that the separators are comma and double quote. Otherwise, it will just give you the standard white space, the separators. Okay, once you have the separators, you can say, hey, here's the data string, okay? Take the data string, split it based on the separators. That's what this is. And then this part, the string option, whenever you have separators, especially if you have two separators in a row, like a comma and then a double quote, or a double quote and a comma, what happens is that those become empty tokens. So when you split the string, you will get your tokens, like the date, the open, high, low, close, but you could also have some empty ones. Okay? Imagine if your separators were white space and you happen to have 3 spaces in a row, okay? It could break those and say these are empty tokens. You don't want the empty tokens, so you provide this option to the split method to remove the empty entries. And that syntax is because this is an enumeration, which just by putting this on top, you see enum. This is the enumeration, and it removes empty entries. So we want that particular option so that when it splits, it will only keep the tokens, okay? After having done that, it says I'm gonna have 6 tokens, the date, the open, the high, the low, the close, and the volume. And all we wanna do is take each one of those tokens, which is gonna be a string, okay? And we want to turn that string into the type that we want. So for instance, the date member of the candlestick is going to be taking the date time type. You have to go study this, read it. It'll take you 5 minutes to see exactly how parse works, and that's it, okay? So it will say, give me the string. So my tokens are called value 0, value 1, and so forth. Take this and parse it exactly, and you can tell it what the format you want is. You don't even have to do that, because this can be very confusing, I will explain. But the open, you just say, okay, take the decimal, parse the value into that decimal, and round it to 2 decimal points, and so forth, okay? That's what this does. You could do it differently, it's still parsing, but that's all that this is. You don't even need to do the rounding. You could just say, open is a decimal, so take the decimal type, and every type can parse itself from a string. So decimal, parse values number 1, that will take the string values 1 and parse it or convert it into a decimal value, and I can put that in the open. The only thing that I did, I made sure that I only go up to 2 digits after the decimal. Okay, so this, some of you already have that, so I expect everybody else should also already have this. Let me quickly compile, because I'm going to do the one part that you'll see is really interesting. So now I have my candlestick class, and my candlestick knows how to parse itself. You still have to read. That's about 3 or 4 lines of code to open a stream reader. Again, take the word stream reader in your notes, okay? That's gonna open the file. You can say get line, it gets a line.